Welcome to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Today is Wednesday, December 6th, 2017, and we are going to blast off with some interesting UFO reports. There was a UFO sighting in Westcliffe, Colorado. This occurred November 30th, 2017. And briefly, the witness states, driving northbound, looking east, noticed lights in the sky, pulled over, and started filming. After filming the 18-second video, I watched the lights for 15 seconds more. Then they disappeared. In more detail, the witness goes on to state, I was walking and talking to my brother on the phone while I was on my way home from work. He lives in Texas, and I live in Colorado. I was driving northbound, and I turned my head to look east, and I saw these bigger than a regular star type of light in the sky. As I watched, another one appears next to it. I was already looking at that one, then another one, and then another one, and another, making 5 total lights. I then said, "Oh my gosh, bro, I'm seeing some crazy lights in the sky." He told me to film it, and so I hung up and started filming the lights, which were all doing the same thing. They were appearing and then disappearing, as you could see in the video. The entire time I watched they did this, which was approximately 45 seconds. They then fluttered out and were gone. I waited approximately 5 to 10 minutes to see if they would reappear, and I never saw anything else after that. Next UFO sighting, black triangle sighting in Aurora, Colorado. This occurred November 30th, 2017. In brief, the witness states, observed triangle-shaped craft hovering, then abruptly moving in an arcing and zigzagging pattern, low, then slightly raising in altitude in oblique path to Buckley Air Force Base. The witness goes on to state, I was commuting home close to 8:55 p.m. Mountain Standard Time and had an intuitive sense to open the moonroof in my Acura RDX, specifically to observe the moon, which my son has been tracking for his class titles and studies. When I did, I both saw the moon as well as a low-flying, triangular-shaped object that appeared stationary. I slowed my vehicle and pulled to the side of the road to observe it. I was almost home, and our subdivision is close to both Buckley Air Force Base as well as wide open space east to the Denver-Aurora metro area. At first glance, I believed the object to be one of many aircraft often sighted over the airbase. However, most of those craft fly during the daylight hours, and in 13 years in living at this location, I have never observed a craft looking like this one. I observed the triangle-shaped craft hovering, then abruptly moving in an arcing and zigzagging pattern, low, then slightly rising in altitude, an oblique path to the Buckley Air Force Base for approximately just over a minute. Initially, I believed it must be an airplane, but after seeing its unusual movements as well as visually comparing the size of it to other aircraft in the nearby airspace, which there are regularly many. We live about 20 miles south of Denver International Airport. It became clear to me this was an enormously sized aircraft compared to other visually observable craft in the night sky. It also moved distinctly differently from anything else I saw tonight or virtually any night. Although in past years I have been witness to other unusual aerial phenomena, particularly when I lived in Boulder, Colorado. The object hovered, changed direction slightly, then arced away at an increasing speed, first south, then accelerating in a northeastern arc towards the Air Force Base. As it moved away, I resumed following it with my car, finally losing track as it moved too far east for me to observe any longer over the suburban housing subdivision. Wow, cool. The next UFO sighting occurred in Ocala, Florida, on November 29, 2017. In brief, the witness states, walked into backyard with dog, was looking at stars, clear night, full moon, observed very bright light, approximately 15 degrees above horizon in the northeast. 5 whole minutes, no movement. Ran inside to get camera. Object gone within 30 seconds. All right, here's more in detail. I had just stepped into my backyard to walk the dog. The moon was full and bright. Very few clouds, if any. Clear sky. I was looking at the stars when I observed an extremely white, bright object approximately 15 degrees northeast from my position. It appeared to be 15 to 20 miles away to the northeast. This is horse country, so there wouldn't have been anything in that direction except horse farms. I'd never noticed anything in that part of the sky before. What caught my attention was the size, the brightness, and the total lack of movement. It was significantly larger than the stars seen visible in the same night sky. It aroused my curiosity. No flashing lights, no color changes. I stared at it for at least 5 minutes. I felt that I was witnessing something unusual, so I ran into the house to grab a camera. I was only a few yards from my bedroom, so it took me only 30 to 40 seconds to grab a camera and to return to the same position. I looked up and was amazed that the object was no longer present. Wow, pretty darn cool. Then on to some UFO science and mystery. The question of this article is the Mirage Men. Did CIA create UFO double bluff to mask new technology? For 4 decades, the CIA, the National Security Agency, and the U.S. Air Force wore behind a concerted effort to fool Americans that UFOs really did exist in order to mask new technology which the Pentagon did not want anybody knowing about, according to a new book. Mark Pilkington, a British writer who has researched the subject extensively and contributed to a book called The Mysterium, told Sputnik the strategy was led by mysterious figures he dubs the Mirage Men. He said a classic example was the Roswell incident in 1947. Mirage Men exploited Roswell incident. On July 8, 1947, the U.S. Air Force's 509 Bomb Group put out a press release that Army personnel have recovered a flying disc which had crashed on a ranch near the Roswell Air Force Base in New Mexico. Quote, the area was riddled with radiation detecting balloons, and it almost certain that it was crashed. The Air Force put the flying disc story out and thought it would not be taken seriously. They then said it was a weather balloon. The story disappeared, but UFO researchers picked it up in the late 1970s, and it was encouraged by the Mirage Men, who put out fake documents. It is one of the most famous examples of their work, Mr. Pilkington said. In the early 1950s, the U.S. military was testing a lot of new technologies, and it was convenient to disguise them as UFOs. It was a double bluff, said Mr. Pilkington, who has produced a documentary about the Mirage Men. U-2 spy plane passed off as a UFO. One of the new aircraft that needed to be disguised was the U-2 spy plane. In April 1960, one of the planes flying at high altitude was shot down over the Soviet Union, and the CIA pilot, Gary Powers, was taken into captivity and eventually exchanged for a KGB agent in Berlin. But in the 1950s, nobody even knew of the U-2's existence. Witnesses would sometimes see something flying very high in the sky, glinting in the sunlight, and would report it as a UFO, the author said. Mr. Pilkington added the Air Force's original strategy was to tell witnesses what they had seen was a reflection from the planet Mars or Venus. But later they realized that it made more sense to spread the UFO myth as people were highly perceptible to it. Project Silverbug. He said another famous craft was the Avocar flying saucer, a top secret operation known as Project Silverbug. UFO mythology served as a convenient cover, said Mr. Pilkington, who has discovered that key executives from the media and from Hollywood, including film mogul Darryl Zanuck and Time Life CEO Henry Luce, were involved in something called the Psychological Strategy Board, which was behind the promulgation of the UFO myth. Mr. Pilkington said the history of UFOs was intrinsically linked to the Cold War. One of the earliest and most famous sightings near Mount Rainier, Washington State, in 1947 was by Kenneth Arnold, a U.S. aviator and businessman. He described seeing 9 saucer-like objects hovering in the sky. The U.S. feared UFO spotter was Soviet agent. Quote, the U.S. authorities were so paranoid about Soviet infiltration of the aviation industry that they worried he might be a Soviet agent. They set up an entrapment operation which tragically led to the death of several U.S. pilots who crashed while flying back with UFO debris, said Mr. Pilkington. In the 1980s, a similar subterfuge was used to conceal the development of the stealth bomber, which was officially known as the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit. Mr. Pilkington said the Mirage men infiltrated the UFO research community and spread UFO fake documents. In the 1970s and 80s, they were trying to find out who was sharing information with the Soviets. There was a big fear that the Soviets were infiltrating the UFO community to find out about the stealth program. But is there any solid proof that this was what the CIA was up to? The CIA will never admit to it. There is no smoking gun, but the CIA are never going to admit to it. But there is a large amount of circumstantial evidence, and about 10 years ago, the CIA's own in-house magazine carried a piece about the link between U2 and UFOs. Mr. Pilkington told Sputnik, adding that he did not expect them to reveal all their UFO files in the same way they recently released papers on the JFK assassination. The CIA, while refusing to confirm it was behind the Mirage men, admitted in 2007 the UFO craze had got out of hand in the 1950s. A CIA study group revealed that the Soviets could use UFO reports to touch off mass hysteria and panic in the U.S. The group also believed that the Soviets might use UFO sightings to overload the U.S. air warning system so that it could not distinguish real targets from phantom UFOs, admitted the CIA in a 2007 article. Wow, that's pretty wild. Another interesting article about aliens. The title states ETs were at NASA from the beginning. It would take a book to cover Bill Tompkins' resume and professional accomplishments. Suffice it to say that he was born with a high IQ, a photographic memory, an engineer's mind, and the ability to see the big picture. So big that it reaches out into the universe.
When we listen to the radio, we never agree on the station.
Classic rock.
Hip hop. Pop.
Guys, quiet. The one thing we do agree on, we all want an awesome free phone. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 free phones of your choice from brands you love, like Samsung, Motorola, and LG when you switch. Metro PCS. Wireless figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Free phone requires port. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.
For all those reasons and more, he became a key player in aerospace development even before NASA was created in 1958. Eventually, he served as a confidential advisor to the top 2 men at NASA, Dr. Werner von Braun and Dr. Kurt Debyo. The photo shown in the article is of William Mills Tompkins and is from a 2016 interview when he was 93. A year later, he was still alive and kicking, and his mind remained keen. However, he passed away this year in August at the age of 94. Tompkins became a big fish whistleblower in 2010. That was the year his tell-all book, entitled Selected by Extraterrestrials, was published. His book is packed with revealing and previously secret information about the early days of NASA and the glory days of moon exploration. But what surprised so many people was that extraterrestrials were helping behind the scenes every step of the way. Now, these ETs were not what you might expect. Tompkins says they were exquisitely beautiful Nordic ETs who served as secretaries to those in the upper echelons and advanced aerospace research and development. He states, I wondered about these extremely good-looking star girls who seem to know even more than us, Tompkins wrote. Why did they show up out of nowhere? Give us a few bits of advice on how to do our jobs and then just leave mysteriously. It took several years for us to accept that the star girls really were aliens, Tompkins explained. Even though the first time I laid eyes on them for that microsecond, I felt that they were alien. Tompkins said his secretary never said that she was a Nordic, even though she flirts almost daily with me, exposing her unbelievable knowledge of the universe. And yes, she frequently stuffs my head with exactly what is needed on a program. When I implement the plan, it works every time. Reptilian and gray aliens. While the Nordic aliens sought to help mankind develop technology to go to the moon and beyond, Tompkins said reptilian and gray aliens were only interested in interbreeding and control, and to try to sabotage mankind's efforts to go into space. Tompkins quoted what a VP of an aerospace company said during a high-level meeting regarding these 2 races of extraterrestrials. He added that one strain of greys, who at times work for the reptilians, really need to be dealt with. They are very bad people that are sometimes useful, but always troublesome. Several strains of the reptilians must also be dealt with, as they are extremely violent ones, very dangerous, the worst, and a race of killers. Yikes. According to Tompkins, the reptilians can shapeshift into human form. After one high-level meeting, a key man at Douglas Manufacturing said, "Who the F were those alien guys that looked like us just before the meeting?" Well, just as they disappeared, both of them turned into reptilians. The tall one with no sound yelled back, his face twisted with hate, while the other one appeared to hiss. Yuck. Another witness to the shape-shifting added, quote, "Yes, Bill, for just a moment, I think the tall one clawed at us, too. Did you see their grotesque-looking feet?" The reptilians and greys, who Tompkins lumps together as black hat aliens, were another reason the Nordic ETs were trying to speed up mankind's space efforts. He explained that the Nordic ETs want to help us develop capabilities that will provide our U.S. Navy space systems the tools necessary to deploy and operate our deep space battle groups. This will be in conjunction with their offensive Nordic naval missions that are against the Black Hat aliens. And as for the Black Hats, Tompkins explains the primary intent now appears to be to prevent us from developing the capability of retaliating against them and their threats. Oh, okay. On to some paranormal points with a touch of cryptozoology. This article states that they received this following report October 19th, 2017, from a 29-year-old woman who lives in Mill Spring, North Carolina, which is due east of the Green River Game Lands, a perfect terrain for Bigfoot. She simply identified herself as TJ and her friend as Bobby. Bigfoot with its child seen in Mill Spring, North Carolina. She states, "There's nothing special about me. I'm just an ordinary person who witnessed Bigfoot about a month ago from today. It was about midnight. My friend Bobby and I were walking back home from visiting another friend who lives in the same neighborhood. The neighborhood we live in is mostly backwoods and houses are pretty well far apart. During the back way on the dirt road from her house to hers was a lot closer than taking the main road, so we walked with flashlights. When we approached a home, we turned off our flashlights so we wouldn't disturb anyone. As we walked past one neighbor's home, all her outside dogs started to bark, but as we walked on, they stopped barking. As we started up the hill approaching the light pole, we turned our lights out. At the same time, we both saw what looked like a Bigfoot creature. Bobby quickly squeezed my hand firmly, and we both stopped walking. This creature was walking up someone's driveway under a light pole. It looked to be about 7.5 feet tall, with brown hair all over. It walked almost slanted over, but upright. Its arms were long, almost past the knees, and its fingers were curled under, almost like an ape. The creature took about 4 strides up the driveway, and at the top it turned around and headed back down where the trees and bushes hid it. But when it turned around, it had a young Bigfoot by its side, holding its hand. We just stood there for a few moments and then started walking again. But we both know what we saw. It is not made up. Yikes. Next, a small white figure can be seen in the upper left portion of the photo provided. And goes on to state, game cam photo may show Cherokee Little Person. People have told us since 2000 that they've seen Cherokee Little People in remote mountain areas of western North Carolina. The reports were typically told with great conviction, but without tangible proof. Well, on August 15, 2017, a game camera may have snapped that proof in the woods near the Blue Ridge Parkway. The game camera was set up by a couple who live off a 1-lane road near the top of a mountain ridge. We've known them for many years, but we'll call them Jack and Jill to keep the little person's territory from being invaded. In the couple's credit, they pondered the above photo for weeks before sharing it with this article. Jack thought the figure might be the backside of a slightly crouched nude figure with dark hair, while Jill thought it could be a spirit ghost. They also did a bit of research After determining where the little person was standing in relationship to the trees, Jack stood in the same spot and kept crouching down lower and lower until he was the same height as the figure in the photo. We also did some basic research. We maximized the color saturation of the photo, and the white figure in the woods turned magenta. When we did the same thing with multiple photos of ghosts, the ghosts remained white. That seemed to indicate the figure in the woods was not alive and not a spirit or a ghost. Wow, sounds like they're pretty certain about that. Well, I want to thank you all for listening to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Be sure to check out ufoheadlinenews.com and also tune in to my other 2 weekly radio shows. I host a show called The Outlander, which is on Fridays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. And then on Tuesday nights, I co-host on The Kevin Cook Show at the same time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. And also, catch my paranormal comic. It's called The Outlanders. Direct links can be found at HeidiHollis.com or just come on over to InceptionRadioNetwork.com and enjoy everything you see. Remember always to keep an open mind so you can stay informed and inspired.
When we listen to the radio, we never agree on the station.
Classic rock.
Hip hop. Pop.
Guys, quiet. The one thing we do agree on, we all want an awesome free phone. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 free phones of your choice from brands you love, like Samsung, Motorola, and LG when you switch. Metro PCS. Wireless figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Free phone requires port. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details.